Aloha. Will the Committee on Public Infrastructure and Technology please come to order? We'd like to welcome Vice Chair Say, Councilmember Tolba, Councilmember Wire, and Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. We do not have any members participating remotely by video conference, but I would like to make an announcement pursuant to Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes. This meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, remotely and in person in the Council chamber. Remote and in-person oral testimony will be allowed when the agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen, activate your audio feed when prompted. I will then give persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom to be called on. For those joining by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Some friendly reminders and tips: video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you're watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your television at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Once all remote testifiers have testified, I will proceed to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. For those council members participating outside of the chamber in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, we will recess. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agendas. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. We're going to start with agenda item 1, informational briefing, the downtown electric system update by the Hawaiian Electric Company. We do have some administration or others here that are going to present. I will introduce them in 1 second, but let's take any remote or in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered in-person testimony?
Chair, we have none.
Clerks, do we have any non-registered in-person testimony?
Chair, we have none.
Clerks, do we have any registered remote testimony?
Chair, we have none.
Clerks, do we have any non-registered remote testimony?
Chair, we have none.
Okay, seeing none, members, we are going to start with the presentation. We'd like to introduce, again, Jim Kelly, VP of Government and Community Relations, Corporate Communication, Hawaiian Electric, and then when the next person comes up, I'll introduce him. Please proceed, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Tupola. Thank you, council members. Appreciate the opportunity today to talk about the events on our network in Chinatown last month. As you know, we had 2 separate outages. One was on June 13th, and then there was the extended outage that lasted about 3 days from June 17th to June 21st. These outages overall affected about 3,500 customers downtown and Chinatown. And right now we're in the process. We've hired a outside engineering expert to do a root cause analysis to look at what the cause of those outages was. And what we initially know that there were cable faults, one of which started an underground fire, which is the one that caused the damage that resulted in the extended outage. And so that's why I've hired an outside expert to take a look at what the cause was and make sure that we understand what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. We're continuing to engage with customers, and I'll talk a little bit later about the claims process and about some of the discussions we've been having with people that were affected in Chinatown. We know this was a highly disruptive event that I've personally talked to a number of business owners and residents, and we know that it was a hardship. And on behalf of Hawaiian Electric, I apologize, and can only tell you that I know that our entire team, all the guys that are down in the hole working 12-hour shifts, they were all focused on getting the power back as soon as they could, and we all wish that there had been a faster resolution. This came up in the previous meeting. We have an asset strategy that we've been executing on that goes back several years, recognizing that Chinatown with the underground grid is one that needs maintenance, upgrading, and so we have a very ambitious plan around that we've been executing on, and we also have the future plan, which, as I mentioned, is one that we're going to be accelerating. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but that we're figuring out how we can get that done faster and really make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Little history on the downtown grid. Actually, we had underground service in 1939. It used to be fed directly from the Honolulu power plant. And so downtown Honolulu and most of Chinatown was one of the first areas that had all underground utility service. Starting in the 1950s, as more buildings were being built, more commerce going on downtown, the downtown network was expanded. A lot of more heavier duty equipment to deal with increased load, increased demand was brought in. Underground vaults, underground expanded manholes, a lot more high voltage cable put in, and that went on from the 50s really through the 90s. It was really the downtown grid, and Chinatown is among the most reliable, if not the most reliable grid on Oahu. Until there was the Kona low rainstorm back in 2022, there was an outage, and then this most recent event. But before that, it was exemplary in terms of the number of outages and the reliability. And my colleague Colton Ching can talk a little bit about what makes the downtown network unique on Oahu. So, and Mike and Colton will be talking about what our plans are, but the bottom line is that over the next 5 years, we plan to spend a total of $60 million to replace and repair and refurbish, upgrade all of the components that make up downtown Chinatown grid. And by doing that and accelerating that work, again, we think we can make sure that something, an outage of the duration that folks down there experience doesn't happen again. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colton to go into some of the details, if that's okay.
Yes, please. We next have Colton Ching, Senior Vice President of Planning and Technology from HECO.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. So as Jim Kelly mentioned, we have a plan to invest over $60 million in the downtown network itself. Since 2018, if you can go to the next slide, and today we spent almost $23 million doing a number of things to refurbish and upgrade equipment that serves and comprises of the downtown network. First and foremost, we're sort of in the ending phases of completing a replacement of a brand new transformer in one of our EVLA substations. This is a transformer that feeds the downtown network. So we're going to have a brand new transformer. This is a huge one, size of a building, converts 138,000 volts of electricity down to 11,500 volts. That should be in service at the beginning of August. In addition to the work at the EVLA substation, within the downtown network itself, over the last 7 years or so, we've been replacing a lot of the pieces of equipment that you probably can't see. They sit underground in a vault. If you happen to be walking or driving around in downtown, you'll see our flat panel trucks on the side of the road, probably blocking a lane that you're trying to get through. But you have folks opening up these gratings. They have hoists and they're working on things. We've been replacing things like network transformers, network protectors, and equipment like that. These are the electrical devices that serves individual blocks and individual buildings throughout the downtown network. So we've done the replacement of 28 of those network transformers and 27 devices called network protectors. Those are pieces of equipment that ensures that those electrical systems work properly. All of that equipment in the downtown network is all connected to each other all the way back to EVIL-A through a series of underground cables. And we've also been, over the last several years, replacing some of the older cables of older technology with new cables using current technology. We've been doing it every single year, replacing sections. When we're replacing these equipments, we replace the cable that's associated with them. And we try to replace cables where we can, where replacements can be done without taking a significant customer outage, not power outage of the customer, so that we can perform that work. In addition to that, if you can imagine, I mentioned that a lot of the equipment is stored in vaults underground. A lot of those vaults are in sidewalks all throughout downtown. So when it's raining, when there's a lot of storm water, water fills up those vaults. Our equipment is designed to operate flooded underwater, but it still impacts its service life and its reliability. So we've been looking at ways, and we have a test system in place today to pump that water out of the vault, put it into the storm drain system with the necessary permits from the city to do so, so that we can keep our equipment drier and make the working environment safer for our linemen and electricians when they're working down there. The network itself, electrically, you talked about that, but there's things like concrete and steel that's also part of the system. A lot of these vaults are fairly old concrete, steel reinforced concrete structures that are underground, and a lot of them have experienced a lot of spalling, where the concrete is starting to crumble, the rebar underneath is starting to rust. So we need to also refurbish that, and we've been doing a number of vaults, refurbishing the concrete and steel along with that. So that's $23 million that we spent to date on that. Next slide. Going forward, over the next 5 years, we plan to invest another $42 million. These are improvements and upgrades that are part of our strategies that Jim Kelly mentioned earlier. Part of what we plan to do in the next 5 years includes replacing about 36 circuit miles of that older underground cable that I mentioned earlier that we haven't replaced yet. We also want to replace 2 more of those transformers at EVIL-A. Like I mentioned, we're finishing up 1 right now. We want to put 2 additional ones in, new ones in over the next 5 years. So we'll have 3 new transformers, modern transformers serving the downtown network, providing a lot of redundancy, serving the system. And then those network transformers and network protectors, what we've done just under 30 over the last several years. We plan to replace about 5 of them per year, beginning next year going forward. So we're going to continue that replacement every single year, focus on those that are in the worst condition, and then address the ones that are in better condition over time. So that's what we plan to do. There's a number of other things that's on the next slide, but just in the interest of time, just to highlight, continue to do refurbishment of those vaults. We want to improve the safety to the public and to our electricians and linemen working there. So we plan to put in switches and other sectioning devices so we can perform work on the downtown network and do it more safely for our workers and have a reduced impact to customers, keeping the lights on there while they don't have to experience an outage in order for us to perform that work. And then to wrap it up, just very critical, even if we have good equipment, modern equipment in place there, stuff happens. So we do have a set of spares today for the critical pieces of equipment. We're looking to enhance and increase the number of spares that we carry, so that when unexpected stuff happens, we have the major pieces of equipment, the cables, all in a warehouse, ready to go, should we have an equipment failure. Okay, So next couple of slides give a little bit more detail on the June 13th and the June 17th outage. On this slide here, the red section represents the parts of downtown that's served by the downtown network. You can see it generally covers the area between Baratania, Nimitz, River Street, and Punch Bowl. But it's not a perfect square, right? There's sections within that that actually isn't served by the downtown network. And there's a spur of the downtown network that actually serves the Capitol and the Frank Fossey building. So it goes all the way down to South Street along Baratania. And that red section outlined in yellow, that full downtown network, unfortunately, lost power on June 13th due to a combination of multiple things, unfortunately, occurring on the same day. And on the 13th, we had, actually starting on the evening of the 12th, we had a fault on one of the cables, one of those underground cables. When that fault occurred, the energy that got released when that fault took place damaged some adjacent cables. So we had a couple other cables that were impacted. The outage was limited to a fairly small number of customers when that happened. But the next morning, on top of that, we lost something called the bus tie. And I won't get into the details of what it is, but what the bus tie is a piece of equipment back at the Evil A substation. And when that bus tie failed, it resulted in 1/3 of the cables in the downtown network trying to serve all 3/3, trying to pick up the load from the other 2/3 that lost its ability to get power from Evil A when that bus tie failed. And so we had to manually de-energize the downtown network to avoid catastrophic damage to the cables that were there. So we made some quick repairs to the cables. We figured out what caused that bus tie to fail. It was a false trip. We made some quick adjustments, put it back into service, and got everyone restored later that evening. Next slide. On June 17th, although we had a second event that affected the downtown network, it really was a separate set of incidences that occurred. We did have another cable fault. That cable fault actually occurred in a different location from the cable fault on the 13th. But like the fault on June 13th, when we had that fault on the 17th, that fault also damaged some other cables that were adjacent to the one that had the problem. And as a result of that, we lost power to sections actually outside of the downtown network. Just Mauka of the downtown, you can see it in that, represented by that upper yellow oval up there. We call it 4th Street 4, School Street 7, but basically areas Mauka of the downtown system. But that cable fault and adjacent cable faults also resulted in portions, not the entire downtown network, but just portions of the downtown network to go down a second time. And unfortunately, that included areas of Chinatown, which is also impacted on the 13th, but that outage ended up taking considerably longer to make the necessary repairs to get everyone back into service. And that's why we didn't get everyone back until the 21st. In here, you can see just some of the pictures of the smoking duct banks coming through manholes, and you can see some images that our crews took when they went into the vaults, and you can see the damage that occurred to the cables. So that's what occurred in those two events. In both events, our crews responded immediately to assess what was happening. As soon as the conditions were safe, our folks went in there to make assessments and to begin repairs. We have some particularly difficult challenges when we do responses in the downtown area for the network. The vaults were built for people like me, not for people like Jim Kelly. They're really tiny and it's tight. And today it makes it very difficult to perform work safely when you're in close proximity working on one cable when there's another cable in that same vault that's energized at 11,000 volts. Sorry, I couldn't help myself, Jim. We also are seeing that our vaults getting more flooded every single day, right? Tidal impacts, sea level impacts have changed. These vaults have been there, like Jim Kelly mentioned, a lot of them since the 50s, and these vaults will flood up. So we can't have our crews go in there to work in a vault when it's filled with water. So we need to pump the areas out, get water out. But water is always trying to get in there, right? And so that adds to the challenge and time of getting work done. And then, like many different industries in the electric utility industry, a lot of this equipment that we use in the downtown network is specialized. They're manufactured by a handful of companies in the US and other parts of the world. And the supply chain issues have made it very difficult for us to get this equipment quickly. In fact, manufacturing times that used to take less than a year are now taking 2, sometimes 3 years to get that same piece of equipment built on an assembly line somewhere and then shipped over to Hawaii. So it just requires us to be more forward-thinking, more anticipatory in our strategies to make sure that we can have the equipment that we need in time. And that also emphasizes the need to have a larger inventory of spare parts. I think that's it. I'm going to turn the mic back over to Kelly.
Thank you, Colton. So this is where we get to talking about the impact on people and on businesses, and questions about claims and where we go from here. So I just put this up here. This is Tariff Rule 16. This is established by the Public Utilities Commission, and this basically is how claims, how the process works. And this is on our website, and we send out twice a year. We send a note out to people about this as well. So claims are paid when something happens that was within the company's ability to stop it from happening. So typically a good example is a storm. We get a lot of claims after storms, but it's specific that, you know, we can't control the weather, and so therefore we don't pay claims if there's a storm. The most important part of the process going on right now as to whether we will pay claims related to these outages is the investigation that's being done by the third party to determine what the root cause of these outages is, whether that was something that was in the control of the company to have anticipated, prevented, fixed, or not. And so that's the first when we tell people, well, what am I going to find out? Well, we need to find out the results of that investigation first. And that's not going to be something that's going to take 6 months or 2 years or something. They're working on it right now, and we want to get back to people as soon as we can. So the process right now, the status right now, you can see the update. We had 2 sets of outages and 2 sets of claims. We had a total of 314 for the extended outage. And you can see the breakdown there for commercial and residential. As we've told people from the start, claims are not, we don't pay for lost wages, we don't pay for lost revenue. Claims are paid for things that are tangible losses like inventory or equipment that's damaged, that sort of thing. Now, we've been telling people, and we've been working with Chinatown organizations and individual customers. A lot of folks, English isn't a first language. We had an event that was set up by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce and the United Chinese Society, where we had translators come in, help people fill out the claims forms. And we basically told them, look, don't get hung up on having to count every single something that you had to throw out or the serial number on every piece of equipment. I mean, it's a very, administrative, regulatory process that are kind of bureaucratic. And so we just said, look, do the best you can, fill out the claim form and put it in, and don't worry about every single detail. So if people, when the determination is made about the claim, people still have, if the claim's turned down and people don't feel like that's right, they can appeal to the Public Utilities Commission and file an informal complaint. Okay, so This is something new that we haven't shared publicly yet, but thought this would be a good place to do it. So we put together a package of assistance for the people that were affected by the outage, the extended outage. But you can see right here, so basically we're going to no late payment fees for anyone. We're going to be not doing any disconnections for people not paying their bill. We're going to be offering extended payment plans. We're going to be we've been working with the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. We're going to be doing a donation that we're hoping is going to be used, working with them to get people to come down to Chinatown, spend money, some event sponsorships. We also want to help. They're interested in doing possibly some business training. There's been a lot of questions small businesses have had about insurance and how that works, and so talked about doing some educational programs for small businesses. And we also, after this happened, we've been posting. We went down and we've done a lot of profiles of different Chinatown businesses that were affected by this, encouraging people to come down, meet these people, spend some money, buy some flowers, have lunch. We have about 150,000 followers on our social media accounts, and so we've actually been getting a lot of people liking those, and we've got more coming. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 more that are in the works that we're doing in August. And then for the customers who file claims for the extended outage, so that's the 314, we're going to give, until the claim is resolved, we're going to give each one of the commercial customers $500, and then we're going to give each one of the residential customers $50 until the claim is resolved. So if the claim is resolved and we determine, yeah, that's something we should have taken care of and we're going to pay the claim, the $500 will come off the top of that. If it turns out we don't end up paying the claim, then they can keep the money. I think for the average residential customer, you know, they're talking about spoiled food, that kind of thing. It's around, I think it's around $250. So, I mean, this comes fairly, it's not taking care of the whole thing, but it's something. And so we wanted to do this as a gesture outside of the claims process. This is something the company is paying for. This isn't something that the customers pay for. To acknowledge the unique situation that we have here. None of us can remember a situation where it was a blue sky day. We didn't have a storm, we didn't have any weather, and we had such a long duration outage. It has weighed heavily on the community, and it's weighed heavily on the company too. So we're trying to see what we could do to at least help out with this courtesy payment. And then we'll see. I think it's probably going to be a few more weeks that we'll know whether or not what the results of the investigation are, and then we'll notify everybody what the determination on their individual claim is. And with that, I'll happily take questions.
Thank you so much to everyone who presented today. I'm going to defer to the council member of the area. We have all questions. I have some, but go ahead.
Thank you, and thanks for having this hearing. I really appreciate it. Like Jim mentioned, this is certainly a unique situation, and I really appreciate what you just mentioned about these payments to the affected customers who filed either on the residential or commercial side. I think that's a really good gesture. I'm sure they would appreciate more, but we'll get that determined through the Rule 16 process, which gets to my first question. Just to set expectations, historically, how many Rule 16 incidents have there been where there have been payouts, that is, where HECO has been found to be at fault?
It's actually a pretty small percentage of claims that get paid because, again, you have to show that there was something that happened that was within the company's control to prevent. And it can't simply be, well, a piece of equipment broke and you should have known that it would break someday. So it's actually, it's when someone has made a conscious mistake or someone has done something that, it was within our control, that's when the claims are paid.
Okay. And then I understand that part of the issue for one of the blackouts, and this was alluded to was the Ivole substation. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more, because in addition to the sort of ongoing maintenance that needs to happen, Ivole is slated for pretty significant development over the next 10 to 15 years. And if you could shed a little bit more light on sort of the planning that's going to happen there, the upgrades and things like that, I think that would be really welcome.
One small thing before we continue. Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, can I point you to be a member of the committee? Thank you. Continue.
I'll turn it over to Colton for that.
Sure. So we actually have 3 different substations that we call Ivole substation. So the specific transformers that serve the downtown network are part of the substation that you probably are thinking about. It's the substation right next to Costco's parking lot, right, fronting Dillingham. That substation serves many things, but part of what it serves is the downtown network. That is a substation mostly to provide 46,000 volts to the area and then to serve the downtown network through these 3 transformers. Our plans going forward that we're working with various state agencies to provide new power to Mayor Rights Housing and all the other development in the Ivole, Kapalama on the Diamond Head side. We plan to serve that through the 25 kV distribution system, completely separate from the downtown network. And that's actually served off of a different substation. I think, is it Pine Street, just Mackay of that. So back there we have actually 2 parts of a second and third substation. So we have quite a bit of power there to serve the Ivole area.
Okay, I think that's good to understand. I have 2 more things, and maybe I'll turn it over to the other members of the committee here. I do appreciate just the ongoing outreach. I see the social media posts. I mean, I think this is a really good exercise in getting HECO out in the community, whether there's a blackout or not. And you know, these forums and other informational materials, you know, the Chinese Chamber helped to translate, my office helped to translate some of them. What are you planning to do kind of preemptively in other communities to just get out there and if there were to be something in another community, maybe the Filipinos in Waipahu, Filipino businesses out there or something like that? Are we ready if something happens out there?
We translate quite a bit of our information in different languages. We don't translate our claims form, as I've come to understand, in any other languages. For example, our emergency preparedness handbook, that comes in, I think, 6 or 7 different languages. But I think your point is well taken. I think we need to do a better job. We have people within our commercial services area that work with small businesses, but I think we do need to do a better job proactively communicating exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question before I turn it over. You mentioned that there's needs to obtain permits from the city for things like the stormwater discharge. I'm sure there's other improvements that require city permits. Chair, this is something that I know is near and dear to your heart, is our permitting process. This is a safe space. I see Core. Cover your ears, Core. What can we do as a council to help with this process from your perspective? What are some of the issues that you face in terms of getting permits approved so that this kind of work can take place?
Yeah, so depending upon the nature of the work, sometimes it's permits just from the city, sometimes, and actually often, it's a combination of permits that we need both at the city level but also at the state level. In the case for dewatering our vaults, it actually is a combination of city and state permits that we're going to need. I think in general, the staff that our engineers have been working with have been quite cooperative. I think what challenges we face is that we're trying to do something that the agencies are not familiar with, right? No one else has vaults like us, and they're not familiar with the equipment that we have in there. And doing something new in a process where there's a lot of process along the way and rules that they have to conform to makes it a little bit difficult. I think for anybody, city council and others that we speak with, the message that we try to give is the more we can connect the dots between this request, this application, versus this outcome we're all looking to achieve, right? Better reliability for our customers in the downtown area, increased public safety, right? I think if we try to reinforce those messages that this is why we want to do this and why it would be helpful to do it faster, I think that's an important message that we can all give. It's not just about, Hiko's asking for this, so you should do it, right? I mean, that's just totally the wrong way to approach that, and we know that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think what we're saying is if it durates too long, don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, we know that there is delays. Also, in my district, we used to pull like one-time permits for dredging or taking out water. Now we actually do long-term permits for multiple uses throughout the year so that we're not continuously going through the Army Corps of Engineers every time. I'm sure you guys figured that out already, but we just want to be of service. Councilmember Tulba.
Thank you. What kind of feedback are you getting from the customers, and what's the extent of the impact to the businesses?
Everyone has a different story, and I actually had lunch yesterday with 11 owners of business or buildings who, a lot of them are the landlords for the small businesses that were most affected. And I think there was a number of things that people were frustrated by. We told people the power was going to come back on at a certain time, and it didn't. And then we told them it was going to come back at another time, and it didn't. And, that's something we always struggle with because that's what people want to know. When's the power going to come back on? When's it going to come back on? And I don't want to say that we were overly liberal or over enthusiastic. I mean, we're working with the guys that are doing the work, and they think we can get this done by a certain time. And then they would find there's more damage, and there's more things they got to work on. Then we had the arc flash where the guys were down in the hole when there was the explosion. And so I think that's a lesson because I'm the communications guy. I mean, that's one of the things I really took back from this is we got to be really careful because people basically made plans assuming they were going to go back to work at a certain time. And all of them said it would have been better for you guys to say the power is going to be out for the next 2 days and we can plan around that as opposed to, updating and saying, oh, just hang on a little bit longer. So that's one of the things we've taken back. I think we need to do more. And maybe it goes back to the earlier question about being out in Chinatown, walking around. Not everybody is on social media. Not everybody is getting information that way, especially if you don't speak English. I think we should have been down talking to people in person more than we did. But I have to say, we've had so many people that have, it was right in the middle of everything, right in King Street there. They saw our guys down in that hole working, and they worked 12-hour shifts, and then we pulled them out and put another crew in there. Nobody took a break. Everybody was working straight through, and they knew how hard our crews were working to get the power back on. So I don't think anybody has complained that they didn't think we were working hard enough. But, when you talk to small business owners, that I'm sure you do all the time, you realize what the impact of being out of business for 3 days has. And it's been really, really tough, which is why we decided we wanted to give them something at least in the interim until the claims process works through.
Thank you for that. What's the turnaround time to get claims and funds back to the businesses?
So everybody had 30 days to file a claim since the last outage. So the deadline was last Friday. I think we got a few in over the weekend, and we're going to count those as well. We then send everybody a note back that says, we received your claim, here's the claims number, we'll get back to you on a resolution on this. We're really hoping that we're going to have a report from the consultant for the engineers really soon, and hope we can get back to everybody by, I'd say, the middle of August at the latest. So maybe 3 weeks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Say?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. I have a couple questions for Colton, if he can respond. The first question for me is that when I look at downtown Chinatown grid, I get scared because next thing you know, we'll be addressing the Civic Center and the utilization of more energy. The Wolfat project, the Nimitz Highway, what was the one that we approved? Ikianakea. I'm just wondering if the capacity of what you have presently can accommodate these increases in the volume of more energy.
Yeah. Yeah, we feel very confident that we can. In fact, just by chance, we just had a meeting, a coordination meeting yesterday with several state agencies around this very topic, right? The near-term and long-term planning for redevelopment within the Ivalai area, what the state and private developers and the county has planned over the near term as well as long term, and what is Hawaiian Electric's plan to ensure that we provide service to all of these facilities. You know, an existing facility, like relatively big piece of property, low electricity use based upon past usage. Now it's going to have a 40-story mixed use condo business workforce housing project, right? So that we need to make sure we can do that. That gets to what I said earlier. Our plans to serve that is to serve that off of a different distribution system, also called the Ivalai substation. We're probably going to kick ourselves for the next 30 years for giving it the same name. But it's a different substation with a different set of equipment and transformers to provide that. So we feel very confident that we have a lot of capacity right there in Ivalai to serve new loads there. And then on top of that, for the areas surrounding Ivalai, like Sand Island, like parts of Nimitz, the more Eva side, the Kapalama area side, we have a new substation that we're building at Awiki, and we have additional capacity at Kapalama. We have additional capacity at other substations just west of the Kapalama area that we can also rely on to serve new loads.
Okay, the other question, what is the use of that old electric power plant by the old Falls of Clyde?
The Honolulu power plant on Olekea. Yeah, so that power plant has been deactivated since 2013. I think we have officially retired, decommissioned that facility. So we've done some environmental abatement work for the old plant side, the Eva side. The equipment's still there from the last 2 units. We're looking at options on how to repurpose that facility for other things, not necessarily for us. But right now, the power plants that were there don't work, aren't operating today to serve our customers.
And I just wanted to say thank you for agreeing with the developers and the city in regards to granting both the city and the Hawaii Electric public easements in getting these projects moving ahead, the land transfers, etc.
Thank you.
Other than that, seems like you're the only business in town that has a surplus of energy. I hope not, because there's more that you have to generate in the future. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Say. So I'll just wrap up with some questions. I guess my question in regards to my district is there's been rolling power outages on the west side since January of this year. Not as extensive as this, definitely not in the thousands of people that have had loss for 3 days straight. But have there been claims filed for any of the rolling power outages in other areas that have been some due to what we've seen in the news as possible green energy gaps that you guys are trying to fix through the night?
Yeah, we've had some claims. I think, Chair, the outages on the west side that we've experienced, we have experienced a slight increase in the number and the duration of outages in the west side since the beginning of the year. They're largely a result of us putting into place settings to reduce the risk of wildfire ignitions in our circuits on the west side. We call it enhanced power line safety settings. We also call it fast trip and block reclose. But we've put in place on circuits, not just in West Oahu, but in other areas where there are higher risks of wildfire ignition. We've put in place these operating changes that will reduce the amount of energy that an electrical line may introduce if it comes into contact with vegetation or the ground. And then we will not automatically reclose the circuit. So we all probably have experienced instances where the power went out and about 5 or 6 seconds later, the power comes back. That's usually a result of an automatic reclose. That's a normal setting for our circuits and our distribution circuits. In higher risk areas, wildfire risk areas, we disable that automatic reclose, and we require a lineman and PTMs to manually patrol that line to make sure everything is intact, everything is safe before we restore power. I believe that's probably the reason for the outages or the change in outages that customers on the west side of Oahu. This is something that we're doing in other areas too, other high-risk areas throughout the 5 islands that we serve.
So it sounds like you guys have kind of planned it as part of your strategy or maybe protocol for wildfire safety. Is that correct?
That's one element of our many protocols. PSPS that we just talked about earlier, that's another element of what we put in place.
Wait, so is my community supposed to know when these are coming through, or you guys just kind of randomly implement them throughout the weeks as far as like those short ones that you guys are doing for the...
So those outages aren't scheduled. Those outages occur or take place when there's a problem with the circuit. So if a tree falls in a line, a car hits a pole, something that causes contact with our conductors or conductors fall, when that happens, our protective equipment, but these enhanced settings will shut off power to the circuit more quickly. These are a result of those events happening, not because we're choosing to shut off power for that certain event. That's public safety power shut off.
Understood. So basically, it's not like you guys planned it out where Tuesday, 5 p.m., we're doing this.
Correct.
You're saying that as it happens, you guys have to do this for safety.
Right.
I guess this question about the aid package. So you guys have this aid package for extended outage for customers, and I'm guessing you did this because it was the 3 days. Is this something that you guys are going to apply whenever and if ever there are outages for longer durations of time?
We haven't done this before. I think we would have to look at whether it's what the situation is. This is a unique, non-weather related situation. Obviously, if there's a storm or something like that, I don't think that would be a different circumstance.
I'm just asking because it did sound like it was new. It sounded like you guys had to create it.
It is.
And I'm bringing that up because as we talk about the PSPS and if there are any extended outages, I think if you guys had a protocol and a standard and a set way of determining when and if anyone gets reimbursements, like it's kind of a solid start, right, to trying to build something that you guys could use in the future if we ever needed to, so that there's not ambiguity about when people might be able to claim things if it in fact complies with the tariff and if it meets certain parameters. So I would just say take that into consideration.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And we don't ever want it to happen, but I think everyone would have peace of mind knowing, oh, this is the policy at HECO. If it's 3 days, this is what they kind of go by, so we can all expect it. Has there ever been any outages that were related to any clean energy projects that maybe needed more battery storage so that we could have continuous power through the night, or has that never been the case for any of the outages?
Yeah, so Chair, in January of this year here in Oahu, if you recall, I don't remember the specific day, but we had a day where we had inclement weather, and we had a number of power plants, actually fossil fuel plants, both ours as well as the city's waste to energy facility, that had problems due to the weather, like rain getting into electrical equipment and other things that took those units that were running or were scheduled to run that day out of service. Unfortunately, when that happened, we also had because this is January where our electric loads are typically the lowest in the year, we had taken a number of other generating units, our largest ones, out of service for scheduled maintenance. So they were taken apart basically, and they were not available to run. So when that occurred, with the inclement weather where you didn't have the typical solar production that we do from small and large solar systems, the batteries that we had operating that day that were tied to those solar systems, of course, were not charged by solar power as much as they would have on a sunny day. It's really the combination of all those things happening that resulted in the scheduled outages the evening in January. I apologize for not remembering the specific date. So it's really a combination of things that resulted in that. See, Shannon's on it, so it's January 8th of this year. So that would be the only instance where renewable energy resources had a role in a series of outages, but they were not the sole cause nor the only contributor to that.
Yeah, because we have, 2 battery storage ones in my district now, fairly new ones that I'm guessing you guys might get more of those online, seeing as though we possibly need more storage, not only because there's a few of them that don't have, because a lot of the new ones have both. They have the energy generation and then they have the energy storage, but some of the older ones don't.
Right.
So I'm guessing that you guys will possibly get more battery storage units on as we pursue more clean energy projects?
Yeah, our plans call for quite a bit. Several are still new. Additional ones are under construction right now on top of what's already in service across our islands. And then we're running procurements right now to add additional resources, solar, wind, storage, as well as firm generation.
Understood. Any other questions? Councilmember Wire, anything?
No, Chair, mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dos Santos, Tam, you're good? Well, we want to thank you guys for being here today. I'm sure we could go on and on about HECO questions, but I think for today, we got these 2 things addressed, and we appreciate you guys' continued communication with the council.
Yeah,
With that being
thank you.
said, and no other questions, this meeting is now adjourned.